When you are a student pilot, most of your bandwidth is just entirely consumed by keeping the shiny side up.
Oh, absolutely. It's a lot to handle.
Right. I mean, you're thinking about crosswind landings, navigating busy airspace, trying to memorize like a dozen emergency checklists. But hovering out there in the not-so-distant future is this massive, intimidating milestone, which is the airline interview.
Yeah, it's the big leap.
It really is. So if you're listening to this right now as a student pilot gearing up for that enormous leap, welcome. We pulled together a really fascinating stack of material for today's deep dive.
We really have.
Yeah, we're looking at actual HR grading rubrics, aviation psychology research, and hundreds of interview debrief notes from successful candidates. And our mission today is to completely demystify that interview process by looking directly at the cheat sheet that airline recruiters actually use to evaluate you.
And I think that's so important because there is a huge misconception out there about what an airline interview actually entails.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of candidates walk in thinking it's essentially a conversation to check for good vibes.
Like the classic airplane test.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They assume the panel is just sitting there wondering if the candidate is cool or, if they'd want to sit next to them for a 4-day trip to Omaha.
Right.
And, I mean, while being personable is always a positive trait, that is absolutely not the primary objective. Recruiters are actually evaluating you against a highly specific grading matrix.
A literal matrix.
A literal matrix, yeah. Based on core competencies, they're systematically determining how you'll handle the line and how you'll represent their company.
Okay, let's unpack this because looking through these HR rubrics we have, that is incredibly relieving to hear.
It takes the pressure off, right?
It really does. Because usually job interviews feel like an exercise in mind reading. You sit across the table trying to guess what the interviewer secretly wants you to say.
Right.
But knowing that these panels are explicitly trained to listen for specific traits and that they literally grade you on this matrix, it kind of turns the whole thing into an open book test.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. But, to pass an open book test, you still need to know the material.
True. You have to know where to look.
Exactly. The panel needs specific evidence in your answers. And looking at the foundation of that matrix, the very first non-negotiable trait they are scoring is how you handle your own mistakes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the formal competency on the sheet is called integrity and safety consciousness.
See, here's where it gets really interesting to me. As a student pilot, you make mistakes all the time. I mean, it's literally the mechanism of how you learn to fly.
Oh, for sure. Everyone does.
But in an interview for, say, a legacy carrier, your natural instinct would be to portray yourself as this flawless aviator who never busts in altitude or, misreads a clearance.
And that's the trap. The grading rubrics actually punish that instinct.
Wait, really? They punish you for saying you're perfect?
Absolutely. The panel isn't looking for some general philosophical statement about how honest you are. They are scoring how your integrity is practically applied through the company's safety management system, or SMS.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
Well, they want to hear about a time you broke a standard operating procedure, an SOP made a bad decision, or just, flat out failed.
Looking at these interview debriefs, it seems like they don't just want the confession, right? They want the paperwork.
Exactly. The paperwork is everything.
It's wild. You have to voluntarily tell the people holding your dream career about a time you messed up an SOP and then explain exactly how you reported it through the proper channels.
Yeah, the ownership has to be absolute. No excuses. You can't blame the crosswind. You can't blame your flight instructor or a mechanic.
Right.
The panel is specifically listening for the reporting process you followed. Did you file an ASAP report? The Aviation Safety Action Program?
Or the NASA one, right?
Yeah, exactly. The NASA ASRS, the Aviation Safety Reporting System. Because reporting the error shows that you understand how your individual data feeds into the broader system to prevent the next pilot from making that same mistake.
That makes me think of an analogy. It's like the difference between accidentally breaking a glass in the kitchen and quietly kicking the pieces under the fridge so you don't get in trouble.
Right, which is dangerous.
Exactly. Versus yelling out to the whole house, "Hey, I broke a glass. Nobody walk in here barefoot."
That's exactly it.
But taking that analogy further, based on the psychology research in our stack, it's not even enough to just clean up the glass.
Yeah.
You have to go out and buy cups with better grip so you don't drop them anymore.
Buying the cuffs with better grips is exactly the mechanism the airline cares about.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, the interview debriefs show that detailing the personal system you built afterward is what separates the average candidates from the top-tier ones.
So you have to prove it won't happen again.
Right. You have to explain how you engineered that specific risk out of your environment. Did you change your personal pre-flight checklist? Did you alter your briefing routine?
Interesting.
An airline knows a pilot who never makes mistakes, just doesn't exist. They are hunting for a pilot who systematically insulates the operation against their own human fallibility.
That is such a powerful shift in perspective. It goes from I am perfect to I am human, but I am systematic about managing my humanity.
Beautifully said, yes.
But I guess managing your own errors is really only half the battle.
Yeah.
Because if you have bulletproofed your own routine, you now have the bandwidth to look outward at your environment and your crew.
Exactly, which moves us right into the next major section of the matrix.
Which is?
Crew resource management, CRM, and threat and error management, to HEM.
Right, okay.
Operating with integrity naturally extends to actively gathering information, communicating effectively, and, trapping errors before they compromise safety.
So it's not just a solo effort.
Not at all. CRM and TEM are not just buzzwords. They are daily, practical tools. So when the panel gives you a scenario-based question like a complex mechanical issue en route, you cannot try to solve it alone.
Let's make that scenario concrete, because these concepts can feel a bit abstract when you're a student pilot.
Sure.
Imagine the panel asks what you do when you are shooting an ILS approach into Chicago. You're close to minimum fuel, and air traffic control suddenly issues a hold due to a runway incursion.
High-stress situation.
Super high stress. Now, in action movies, the lone wolf pilot who trusts their gut, ignores the manual and just forces the landing is the hero.
Oh, yeah, the Maverick approach.
Exactly. But reading through the grading criteria, playing the lone wolf here is like the fastest way to fail the entire interview.
The lone wolf is a massive liability to an airline. They don't want heroes, they want managers of risk.
So what's the right answer for Chicago?
In that scenario, the panel wants to hear you explicitly name every single resource at your disposal. You would state that you are putting the aircraft in a safe state, asking your first officer to prep the diversion alternate.
Getting dispatch involved.
Yes, getting dispatch on the radio to calculate fuel burn for that alternate, communicating your fuel state clearly to ATC, updating the flight attendants. You are basically painting a picture of collaborative, safe decision-making.
Okay, so you are utilizing all those resources, applying your CRM, gathering the data. But at the end of the day, it's not a democracy on the flight deck, right?
No, definitely not.
Someone has to synthesize all that data and make the final call. Which brings us to the competency of managing the flight deck, specifically leadership and conflict resolution.
Right.
Because the captain is essentially in an executive management position responsible for a multi-million-dollar asset and, hundreds of lives.
And that executive role becomes incredibly evident when personalities clash.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, you are locked in a very small box with someone you might have only met an hour ago. And you might fundamentally disagree on how to handle a situation.
That sounds stressful.
It is. Airlines need leaders who can unite a crew under those conditions. So when answering conflict, questions like, tell me about a time you disagreed with a captain, or how would you handle a first officer who refuses to follow a checklist, you have to demonstrate that you prioritize safety, efficiency, and adherence to company policy over personal ego.
Okay, let me push back on that a little bit.
Go for it.
If you prioritize strict company policy over a colleague's feelings in a really tense moment, how do you avoid sounding like a rigid, unapproachable robot to the interview panel?
That's a really common fear.
Yeah, because you don't want to come across as a joke who just hammers someone with the rule book while alienating the person sitting 2 feet away from you.
Right, and the way you avoid sounding rigid ties directly into the next competency on the recruiter's matrix, problem solving and analytical thinking. It's about having a logical, organized thought progression under pressure.
Okay, explain that.
You assess the technical problem, you evaluate the human element, and then you make a sound decision based on the safest course of action. It's really about how you arrive at the answer, not just the answer itself.
Looking at the interview prep materials, there's a very specific framework they recommend to communicate this thought progression. It's the STAR or SPAR method.
Yes, highly recommended.
Let's break that acronym down for the student pilots listening who might be encountering behavioral interview structures for the first time.
So STAR stands for situation, task, action, result.
Oh.
And SPAR is just a slight variation. Situation, problem, action, result. This is the architecture for literally every behavioral story you tell.
So you just build your answer on that skeleton.
Exactly. You start by setting the scene, that's the situation. Then you define the specific problem or task at hand.
Makes sense.
Then you detail the action you took, highlighting your CRM, your communication, and your adherence to policy. And finally, you explain the result and, crucially, what you learned from the experience.
Let's apply that STAR method to the conflict scenario you mentioned earlier, like a first officer refusing to run a checklist.
Perfect example.
Because if I just say, I told them to read the manual because I was the captain and I was right, I sound like a tyrant.
You absolutely do.
But using the STAR method, the situation is a high workload descent. The problem is the first officer skipping the descent checklist.
Right.
The action isn't just yelling. The action is calmly stating, hey, I noticed we missed the descent checklist. Let's pull it out and run it together so we're on the same page.
Yes.
And then the result is that the aircraft is configured safely and you have a constructive debrief at the gate.
And structuring the answer that way gives the recruiter exactly what they need to check the boxes on their matrix.
Because it hits all the points.
Exactly. It proves you can process the technical requirement of the checklist alongside the human requirement of not escalating an argument on the flight deck. It shows that logical, organized thought progression they are desperate to see.
Everything we've discussed so far, handling your own errors, utilizing resources, resolving flight deck conflicts, making analytical decisions, it's all fundamentally focused on safely flying an aluminum tube from point A to point B.
Right, the core job.
But as we move further down the HR grading matrix, there's this fascinating shift in perspective.
Yeah.
The sources highlight that companies are actively looking for professionals who do far more than just fly the plane safely.
Yes, and this is where candidates who are technically brilliant often stumble in the latter half of the interview.
Why is that?
Because the competency here is work ethic and mission alignment. Airlines are massive, highly complex businesses. They are hiring employees who will use their talents to further the specific goals of the corporation.
That concept can feel a bit abstract, honestly. I mean, a pilot's job is literally to fly the route dispatch gives them. So how does a candidate practically demonstrate mission alignment during an interview?
Well, looking through the research on different business models, it comes down to knowing who you're talking to.
Like tailoring your answers.
Exactly. A pilot would actually need to give entirely different answers depending on the specific airline they are interviewing with. The mechanism behind mission alignment requires deep research before you ever walk into the room.
So give me an example of that difference.
Consider the difference between a legacy carrier and a low-cost carrier. A legacy carrier's business model is often built around global brand prestige, premium passenger experiences, and vast international networks.
Right.
But a low-cost carrier's model is built on extreme operational efficiency, rapid aircraft turnarounds, and high utilization.
Okay, so if you're interviewing at the low-cost carrier, your answer should probably highlight times you safely expedited a process or worked seamlessly with ground crews to ensure an on-time departure.
Yes, spot on.
But at the legacy carrier, you might emphasize a time you meticulously managed a complex international diversion while ensuring, premium passengers were kept informed and comfortable.
Exactly. You have to tie your behavioral stories back to the target airline's specific mission statement and operational policies.
So you're showing you get the big picture.
Right. You are proving that you are a corporate fit who understands the why behind their business model, not just the how of flying the jet. You have to treat the role as a profession within a corporation rather than just a technical trade.
Which leads perfectly into the final piece of the puzzle on the grading rubric, and that is customer care.
Ah, yes.
Let's be honest, customer care feels incredibly distant when you are sitting behind a locked, bulletproof flight deck door.
It might feel physically distant, sure, but a pilot's actions directly impact the airline's brand and passenger loyalty.
That makes sense.
And the recruiters are scoring you on this competency, but the grading rubrics dictate a very strict order of operations for how you answer customer service questions.
The paradox of customer service in aviation is really fascinating to me. Because usually in the hospitality industry, customer service means giving out free perks, or bending the rules to accommodate a request.
Or rushing a process so the customer doesn't have to wait.
Exactly. But the aviation psychology research explicitly states that in an airline interview, the ultimate form of customer service is strict rule following.
It absolutely is.
It's ensuring that every single person gets home to their family safely.
Yes, bending a safety rule to save 10 minutes for a frustrated passenger is a catastrophic failure of customer service in aviation.
Wow, yeah.
The candidate must emphasize that their primary method of customer care is flying safely and strictly adhering to SOPs. That is the non-negotiable baseline.
And then what?
Only after establishing that safety is your primary customer service tool should you share a specific story of a time you went, outside the box to assist a passenger or a ground crew member.
So you first establish that you never compromise an SOP. And then you tell a story about how you noticed a gate agent struggling with a heavy gate check bag, so you stepped out of the flight deck during a delay to help them lift it.
Yes, great example.
Or maybe how you took the extra time to explain a complex mechanical delay over the PA in a really calm, reassuring way that de-escalated the tension in the cabin.
Exactly. It paints a complete picture of the ideal candidate for the panel.
You check all the boxes.
You do. You show you're a safe operator. You own your mistakes systematically, you utilize your team, you resolve conflict logically, you understand the corporate business model, and you protect the brand through safety first and kindness second.
Looking over these recruiter debrief notes one last time, there is one final glaring pattern. And it's that subtlety is actually your enemy in this interview.
Oh, completely.
It looks like you shouldn't just tell a story and hope the panel magically notices your leadership skills. You should literally say the word leadership.
You have hit on the ultimate cheat code for the airline interview right there.
Wait, really? Just say the words.
Just say the words. Do not make the interview panel guess if you possess these traits. The panel literally has a grading matrix with specific vocabulary words printed on it sitting in front of them.
That's amazing.
Your job is to speak the exact words of those core competencies out loud during your interview.
So instead of just describing a situation where you noticed the weather dropping and decided to add extra holding fuel,
Right.
you would explicitly frame it by saying, to maintain my situational awareness, I reviewed the weather trends and applied analytical thinking to calculate our holding requirements.
Yeah.
You are literally feeding their own grading rubric right back to them.
You are proving out loud that you understand the professional standards of the career. It makes it incredibly easy for the recruiter to check the box and give you a high score on the matrix. You aren't leaving anything to interpretation.
Wrapping this all up, this feels incredibly empowering. I mean, if you were a student pilot listening right now, you aren't flying blind into this process anymore.
Not at all.
You have the matrix. You know they want to hear about your mistakes and the personal systems you built to fix them. You understand how to use the STAR method to structure your stories, proving that logical thought progression under pressure.
And you have the vocabulary.
Exactly. You literally have the vocabulary words to feed directly to the recruiters to prove you are ready for the right seat of a jet. It really turns an intimidating, mysterious interrogation into a highly structured, very achievable presentation of your professional self.
It takes all the anxiety out of the unknown and replaces it with actionable, targeted preparation.
It really does. Well, we've talked a lot about the future today, the big interview that might be months or even years away for you, but I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you head out to the flight lane this week.
Oh, I like this.
If explicitly naming these concepts, like threat and error management or situational awareness, is the key to passing the airline interview down the road, how might actively saying those words out loud to yourself during your very next student training flight fundamentally change the way you fly today?